Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight at the Mob Museum. I'm Shakayla Alvarenga. Thanks for being here. So imagine gaining the trust of one of the world's most dangerous ransomware gangs. Now, this isn't like a movie plot, but in real life, and doing it all from behind a screen. That's exactly what our guest tonight did. Jon DiMaggio is not your average cybersecurity expert. As a former US intelligence analyst, Jon is a cybercrime hunter who goes far beyond the surface, embedding himself in criminal forums, decoding ransomware playbooks, and turning digital footprints into takedown strategies. In 2023, he went deep undercover with LockBit, a ransomware syndicate responsible for countless global attacks. Jon chronicled that journey in the Ransomware Diaries, a gripping investigative series that exposed LockBit from the inside out. He's also the author of The Art of Cyber Warfare, a 2-time SANS Difference Maker Award winner, and a recognized voice in the New York Times, Wired, Bloomberg, and 60 Minutes. You may have also seen him speaking at DEF CON, RSA, or on the front lines of conversations about cybercrime and national cybersecurity. And tonight, he's here to reveal the human side of cybercrime and the toll of living undercover in the digital shadows. And before we begin, we'd also like to extend our sincere gratitude to One Nevada Credit Union for their generous sponsorship for this event. Please join me in welcoming Jon DiMaggio.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you guys for all coming out and enjoying and spending your time with me this evening. So it was a very welcoming greeting. I need to have her come and write some of my intros for real life. But tonight I want to tell you a story about ransomware. Now I want to preface this with, this is going to be a fun talk. I've made it exciting. It was exciting. But don't go try to do this at home. Really bad things can happen even when you know what you're doing. But this is a story of friendship. It's a story of betrayal. More importantly, it's a story about going after really bad people that do bad things. I always say I don't do this job for the zeros and ones. I do it because I want to be able to help people and make a difference. So on that note, when I started doing this, oops. Not that technical. When I started doing this, LockBit had been around for a couple years, and I want to tell everybody about who LockBit is in case you don't know, because it's important to understand that. LockBit's one of the most notorious ransomware gangs the world's ever seen. At their prime, they had the highest volume of attacks ever, and they extorted companies for over $100 million, and that's in a year, in 1 year, let alone they've been around since 2019. These are people who go after hospitals that help children with cancer. The people behind it are homophobic and racist. They say horrible things. It's difficult when you have to pretend to be one of them. It affects you in real life, especially when you spend 2 years of interacting and dealing with these people. So I'm glad I'm on the other side of it, and I'm glad I'm here to tell you this story today. So when you prepare to do something like this, you don't just go jump on the internet and send an email and say, hey, tell me about the crimes you're going to commit. You really have to prepare for it. And you can see there's a do not mention cats. For those of you guys who don't know, you'll see as in some of the screenshots, LockBit has a weird thing about cats. It's actually a lot of hackers and criminals do, but especially LockBit, the guy always sent me cat emojis. But I had to prepare for this, and to do that, I had to be someone who I'm not. I had to create something that would be believable, have a backstory, look like a real person. So I decided to put on a puppet show. And it was not easy. To do that, you have to have, it takes months of developing these. Generally, you'll have one primary account, that's who you're going to engage with, and then you'll have I have two supporting accounts. And those are basically to build up the first account, to give it a reputation, to sort of amp that up, again, to make it believable. It's much easier to do that with, even if it's just you, 2 other accounts that are sort of boasting you and putting you and vouching for you. So sort of developing this fake scene is very creative. It's fun, making up these fake criminal profiles to be. But you actually have to be able to do it well. But then you have to figure out where the bad guy hangs out. And what I mean by that is, where do they buy their attack resources? Where do they hire and recruit the people who work with them? And where do they buy malware or access to get to victims? It's not always just hacking and compromising. Sometimes they'll hire people that have already done that. So determining where they live is very important. And gaining access to these resources always is not easy. They don't just let anybody into these. Sometimes someone has to vouch for you. Sometimes you can buy your way in. But each of them have a different aspect of gaining access to them. So once I figured out where they hung out, oops, I'm gonna have to get that right. I spied on them. So I spent a lot of time going through everything these guys ever posted. And they'd been around for a few years, so I had a lot to read. And I didn't just read what they said. I looked at who they were talking to and profiled those people too. There's a lot of different elements to this, and there's a lot of different people involved that enable these sort of groups to commit the crimes that they commit. So after I felt like I understood them, the whole point of doing that is to profile them. You want to know, what they believe, if they have strong political or religious beliefs. You want to know who their adversaries are, the people who they don't like, and you just want to get a feel for who they are so you know how to approach them. But the next thing you got to do, and this is the fun part, is stealing their friends. And I really enjoyed this. Getting to know the people who they don't just work with, but the people who they socialize with. And LockBit didn't have a lot of friends, but the people that he did were very interesting people. You can see this gentleman. His name is Mikhail Matviv. I had to look at it because I don't know him by that name. I know him by Boris and Wazawaka, the aliases that he uses on hacker forums. This is a picture that he sent me about a year or so ago, and some other researchers as well, of when he was getting married. And I was fortunate. This guy, he signed my name on his laptop amongst a few others, some criminals, some other researchers. And this is the laptop that he committed his crimes with. I don't know what you say to that. Thank you. But you can see, we developed a relationship. And again, that helped me with gaining information and understanding sort of that culture a little bit better. This is Bastlord. I wrote about him in the Ransomware Diaries Volume 2. He is a person who grew up in the Ukraine and had a lot of bad things happen to him, unfortunately, when he was young. And to work his way out of that, he decided crime would be the answer. But this was also one of LockBit's best affiliates. An affiliate, if you guys don't know, it's a hacker who's hired to help, to play a part in the role for a percentage of the profit. And, what was really difficult with him is I actually like him. If I didn't know he was a criminal and we were at a bar, I'd drink a beer with the guy, and that's not usually the case. But he's someone who's also wanted by the FBI and has been indicted. And this is one of my biggest critics here, Mr. B. Bratva. He is a moderator on one of those forums that I mentioned earlier, and he's also he's almost like a liaison between criminals from different ransomware groups. So these guys don't always get along. He kind of gets in between and builds those relationships. And he's also one to go. He likes to go on social media forums, like mainstream social media, and taunt researchers and say that all of our research is wrong and it's bad. But I like him. He's a good critic of my work. So once you know their friends, you need to figure out where they live. So we talked about where they hung out, but this means their infrastructure, what they build to conduct these attacks. And there's some really important things that I learned with this. One, you learn how they extort people, but the more important thing is the affiliate rules. So essentially, it tells you the rules of what you have to do or what you can and can't do in order to be a part of their gang. And the reason this was important is because I tried to join their gang. So this was a nice roadmap to know what I had to do. Now, I knew I wasn't going to get in, and even if I did, I wouldn't be able to stay in because, well, I'm not a criminal, and I'm not going to actually go and hack and extort people. But I went through this sort of interview process, and they use an encrypted app called Tox to talk to you and to talk amongst each other. And within this, they asked lots of questions, and I was pretending to be this young, upcoming hacker that really idolized the leader of LockBit. The leader of LockBit uses an account called LockBit Sup, that's short for LockBit Support. They use it to talk to the media, and they also use it for communicating with criminals. So if I'm having a problem with your ransomware, I'm having difficulties in a negotiation, you can go to LockBit through these channels in order to talk to them. So I went through the interview, didn't make it in, but something strange happened. They left me in the communication chat after it was over, and that was a way I could maintain contact with LockBit. And remember, I'm trying to be this person that idolizes him and wants to be, the next big evil villain of the cyber world. And these guys have huge egos, so it works really well. And that's actually something that you plan out. So when I profiled him previously, I realized this guy had a big ego, and I went and I read a bunch of declassified paperwork on human intelligence, and they've got models and everything, and so I kind of built my own to transfer into cyber. I was winging it, if I'm honest, but it worked well for me, and that sort of gave me an idea of how to talk to these guys. So after that, this is one of my favorite parts, I got to play with their toys. And what that means is this is the panel where you conduct ransomware attacks. Now, what you're seeing here at the time was not being used. It wasn't being used by criminals. It wasn't public. They were using something called LockBit 2.0, and that was their current panel. This was LockBit 3.0. It was going to be what was going to replace it, or what was going to be made available to use instead of it. And this was very valuable from a defensive aspect. I was able to look at this and compare it to the current ransomware panel and identify the new features. And one of the most alarming things that I saw was this dude automated like all these things that used to require a really technical hacker on a keyboard to do. And I realized something. It was going to be much quicker to conduct attacks. There's going to be much more people who can conduct these attacks, and there's going to be a much higher volume. And that's exactly what happened. The numbers shot up on the amount of attacks that they were conducting, and it literally has an effect on the way we live. I mean, I'm sure you guys remember, it wasn't LockBit, but I'm sure you remember Colonial Pipeline. The East Coast couldn't get gas. The KC attack where there was 1,500 companies hit at once. Like, this stuff damages people's lives. There's companies that have to shut the lights out, that never come back. There are patients in hospitals that can't get treatment. They do really bad things. So I took this information and I shared it with law enforcement. I shared it with some other researchers, basically sort of to say, hey, this is what's coming. And so that was a very effective way. And that wouldn't have happened sort of without that human trust, him believing that I'm this upcoming hacker and showing me his toys and letting me play with them. But this was a very effective way to get better at protecting assets against these sort of criminals. So after I did that, being the smart guy that I am, I exposed them publicly. I wrote the Ransomware Diaries Volume 1, and as you can see, I put my face on it, I put my name on it. Now that sounds crazy, but I've been doing this a long time, and when I worked for the government, obviously I didn't talk to people about it, but since I've been out, I've done that, and I've never really gotten the sort of attention that this received. I had intelligence agencies from around the world reaching out to me about this and asking me questions, which shocked me. I had law enforcement calling me. I was get called up to go to the CIA to go talk to them. I mean, it was insane. It wasn't what I expected. But I also got attention from criminals. So the day after I published this, I went back to those forums and I looked, and LockBit, and you don't need to read it, I'll tell you what he says, but LockBit basically, somebody asked him if he read the report, and it made me laugh, his response. He said that he wished that I'd taken photos of him on his boat, with marijuana and girls. You guys gotta understand, the guy that I know is not this guy. This dude saw too many gangster movies, because the guy that I know is much more reserved. And I should also say, there were 2 people behind that account. Remember, it's a support account, so you can't have one person behind it all the time. So you had the main guy that led it, and you had a younger person who was way more friendly. So I had to differentiate the 2. So I publicly, as I continued to write about them, started naming him Mr. Grumpy Pants. And I was upset because he stopped letting me talk to the younger guy. And I knew that because I would send a message to him, and of course he's not going to want to talk to me because he knows that profile is a hacker. But he would take a lot longer to respond, so I realized something was up. But something really interesting happened. He apparently liked me more than I thought, because he started using my headshot as his avatar on the forums. Now, I'm not gonna lie, when I saw this, it was an oh crap moment. It wasn't something I was expecting. And he used this for about 1.5 years until he got banned from his own criminal forums, which is kind of funny, but that's another story. But he started to use this, so at that point, I'm like, screw it. I got nothing to lose. I might as well reach out to this guy and see if he'll still talk to me. So I did. I reached out and I said, hey, I'm a researcher. I just wrote about you. Want to chat? And as you can see from the response, he said, I love you, you best researcher. Not what I was expecting, but I'll take that over threats. So that was an interesting moment for me, and I realized I had this really good opportunity. So I thought this story was over. Now I realized I can talk to him as me. I don't even gotta work for it now. I can just talk to him, and I gotta lie. I can just have a conversation with him, and that's exactly what I started to do. But I wanted to build rapport. I wanted him to trust me. I wanted to send him gifts. So I told him, hey, give me your home address and your name, and I'm gonna send you a copy of my book. And he laughed, and he said, no, you're gonna get me arrested. So I took a picture in my office, and this probably doesn't seem like much, but you have to understand, I'm not hiding who I am. I'm not hiding the background. I wrote him a personalized note. All of these little things that you do, even if you don't realize it, over time, they start to build that bond and that trust with someone. And I could tell that it was going to likely be effective because they seem to be, oddly, big fans. But the truth, which is what I later learned, is this guy loved the cat and mouse game just as much as I did. And that's the reason he kept talking to me. He enjoyed it. He didn't believe I'd ever find him, and he wanted to play the game. It gave him something exciting to do besides, torturing companies and people and stealing their money. So after that, I wanted to double down, so I seduced him with my looks. and he responded to my picture, and he's like, hey, you're a handsome man. You kind of look like Bruce Willis and Chuck Norris. Now, I can see Chuck with the hair, but I don't know about Bruce. You guys tell me, what do you think? So this made me laugh, and I don't share this to embarrass the guy. You generally don't want to embarrass bad criminals who have lots of money. I show it because I want you to see these are people just like you and I. When they're not committing crimes, they're regular people. They have senses of humor and everything else. So then we went on our first date, and it was really ironic. A TV show had reached out to me. They'd read the report. They wanted to talk to LockBit. So with the help with another, I don't even know what to call him. He's not a criminal. He's not a security researcher. Well, I'll just call him a nerd. This guy, VX Underground, we kind of convinced him to come on this show with me. And this was perfect because you can't just go talk to bad guys and just ask them about their crimes all the time. You need something else. So this gave me some subject matter. And it took like 4 months to produce this show. So during that time, we had things to chat about, things to complain about how long it was taking. More importantly, when it was over, we both got to complain because we ended up with like 5 minutes on this hour-long show where like we spent all this time, and of course he's like, do they not know who I am? So it was a bit of a fun moment doing that. But again, it wasn't about the moment. It was about building that trust, building that bond, getting him to want to tell me more. When they let their guard down, the mistakes that they make, the information they share, I'm having fun with it. But that's the information that stops these attacks. That's the information that keeps people that have some disease or cancer or some illness being able to continue to get treated. It allows kids to continue to go to school. It allows banks and financial institutions to keep operating. operating. So there was a serious purpose behind it. So things eventually got awkward. He is using my face on the forums, and on these forums, he's extremely combative, he's extremely dramatic, and he's arguing here with the leader of another ransomware group, and he's calling him names and all these other things. And at some point, these other really bad criminals are going to be like, "Who's this handsome guy that I'm staring at all the time?" And then it's going to lead them back to me. So I needed to do something, so I extorted him. Made sense at the time. I made a post, just like they do with their victims, countdown timer. I made myself the bad guy, and I made him the victim, and I put being a pain in my ass since 2019 when this all started. Now, you gotta remember, guys, I knew this guy. We'd been talking for a while now. I thought he would know I was joking. So I told him I needed $10 million, and I needed it by August 15th. Now, he couldn't pay me if he wanted to. He'd have to have a Bitcoin wallet to do that. So again, this was meant to be a joke. But he didn't respond after the first day, and, well, I wanted attention. So I posted this. Now, I'll admit, I can admit a mistake. I should have asked for 20, not 10 million. But I didn't get a response, and it was weird. And then something really crazy happened. LockBit went offline, and remember, this is their support account. This is how they talk to other criminals. So I was like, what's happening with him? And then I started getting messages from the people who worked with him, the people who were his friends, asking if he was dead, if he was in jail, and if I had something to do with it. And then another one thought I was going to de-anonymize all the criminals who work for him. Now, I don't know about you guys, but it's generally not good to have a lot of criminals think you're about to name them publicly, and that you helped to get someone either put in jail or killed. I guess they really thought I was Bruce Willis. So I had to figure out what was going on, because I knew I didn't do this, but all these people thought I did. And I was coming to DEF CON in a couple of weeks here in Vegas, and I'm like, they'll know exactly where I'm gonna be and when I'm gonna be there. This combination is not good for stress and anxiety, that's for sure. So I found out shortly after what happened. At the same time I pretend extorted him, another cybersecurity company, Prodaft, they actually did hack him. And what you see in this image is the admin panel that the criminals used to log in, which I showed you the images of before, to conduct attacks. And they posted this, and it says, "But do we really have to?" Meaning they don't need to log in. They gained access themselves. So I sort of connected the dots here. Just my good luck on timing, I go pretend to extort him, and somebody actually gets into his infrastructure and hacks him. So that's the reason why. But if he did finally come back online, and I had to keep this operation going, so we hugged it out, told them, "Hey, glad you're back, you're not dead. That wasn't me, that was those Prodaft guys." And he sent me this, you can see the little smiley emoji, and I was very upset. You see, as I mentioned, he always sent me cat emojis. This was a very passive-aggressive way to tell me he wasn't happy with me. But life continued, and LockBit got new friends. And I don't think he liked his new friends too much, because they gave him a lot of attention he didn't want. Law enforcement, the NCA, which is the National Crime Agency, took his servers down. And the National Crime Agency is comprised of law enforcement and governments from around the world. That's what happens when you do really bad things. For anybody out there who's thinking about doing things, you get a lot of attention and heat, not just from the local police, but from all around the world. And they took his servers down, and when you went to their site, you saw this message now. So for you guys who don't know, when you get hit with ransomware, they steal your data, and they use a leak site to post that data. And that leak site is something for anybody who can get to the dark web can see, but it's a way that journalists will see when there's a new attack, and it's a way that victims see that their data is posted publicly. And what they do is they'll just post a little bit of it to kind of pressure you to pay. So now that was down. And The best thing is when you log into the panel, because the infrastructure, you have the leak site, you have a panel, and some other resources. So when the attacker logged into the panel, they had these individualized messages directly from law enforcement, this little love note that says, hey, we've been watching you, we know who you are, we know the crimes, we've been tracking your wallets, watching your conversations, we're gonna be in touch, but things will go better for you if you reach out first. Now, I don't think they actually knew who they were at this point, because nothing happened after this. But something more effective than a paper on an indictment happened for a criminal anyway. LockBit lost trust. And it's so ironic because he lost trust with other criminals because they felt, wow, my anonymity and my data was supposed to be safe by you, and someone took it and exposed it. Well, that's exactly what they do to their victims. So I loved this. This was great. I wish I could say I was a part of this, but I saw it at the same time everybody else did. But this was awesome. But things had to continue. LockBit came back 5 days later. He stood up new servers, put up his panel again, and put up his leak site, and he made the first victim the FBI. Now, here's the thing. He didn't actually compromise the FBI. You click on this, and I don't know if he was drunk or what he was doing, but it was like this 4-page letter about how he just got complacent and lazy, and that's the only reason they got in, and he promised it wouldn't happen again. But people did still work for him, but he lost some of the really senior people because, criminals have options. I don't know if you guys know that, but there's a lot of ransomware groups out there. There's not just one. So they have options, and if they don't trust you anymore, they go somewhere else. And unfortunately, there's a long line of people that want to work for groups like this, so they're replaced, but they're not usually technically as good. Now remember, you have that panel, so I could teach a kid to point and click and conduct a ransomware attack with that thing. But the really good companies that have strong defenses, this doesn't always work. And that's why you want the really technically skilled affiliate hackers to work for you. And he lost quite a few of them. So at that point, we'd been talking for a long time. I want to say, I suck with time. I want to say this was like 12, 18 months at this point, and it had been about 5 or 6 months since that first takedown, where law enforcement took down his servers. And I found out that LockBit had taken down this hospital in Chicago called St. Anthony's Hospital. Now, I was naive, I'll admit that. I really believed I could get this dude to give back the key to unlock their data. So you have to understand a lot of the technology that works in hospitals to provide services and treatments runs on operating systems that are now encrypted thanks to LockBit. And they're having to move all these kids that have cancer, they can't give them treatment, and you can imagine when you got 20, 30 people with cancer and you have to move them, that's not a fun way to live your life as it is, let alone now you're having to not get your meds and you're having to be moved. Now, a year before this, LockBit hit another cancer hospital, and it was called Sick Kids, and he got a lot of bad press, and because of that, he gave them the key. He did the right thing. So I believed that I could actually get him to give back the key. And I said to him, hey man, these kids are suffering, you've got their data, you're still gonna get paid, but give them the key so they can decrypt their operating systems and they continue giving people treatment and life can go on. And he said to me, you need to stop listening to the press. Healthcare companies are really greedy. Of course, I understand the perspective, but that doesn't give you the right to go and take these organizations down and extort them. But I really thought with the kids he would listen to me, and he didn't. This bothered me a lot. And again, I'm having fun, but seriously, this really, really pissed me off. And I sat there and I typed up this message to him. I'm trying to not overly swear here, so I'm not going to use the exact words that I had typed. But it was this threat, and it was letting him know that I'm coming for him and what I thought of him for what he was doing and how it was affecting children, and that I was going to use everything I had, every resource to get him. I think I even had the taken quote in there, telling him, I had a special set of skills and I was going to be a nightmare for people like him, and I was. But I didn't do that. There are certain rules that you have to have when you do this type of work. But the most important rule is you cannot let your personal feelings and emotions affect what you do. When you do that, things go bad. And if I had done that, I would have had to stop doing this type of work and gone back to traditional cybersecurity, because you'll get yourself killed doing stuff like that. So I didn't. slept on it. The next morning, I just responded with a thumbs up, and life went on. Then I found out something very interesting. Remember, early on, I pretended to be somebody else. I sort of catfished LockBit. Well, apparently LockBit catfished me because he told me all these things like he lived in New York, not Russia. Who knew? He owned 2 restaurants in New York, and he drove a Lamborghini. Law enforcement posted this message. Apparently he doesn't drive a Lamborghini. He drives a Mercedes. He doesn't live in New York. He lives in Russia. And this really upset me because I don't hang out with criminals that drive a car that I can afford, okay? I expect at least a Lambo or a Bugatti or something like that. A Mercedes? Come on, man. And you can see law enforcement's having some fun with him too, with the cat emoji. So I'm not the only one apparently that noticed this. But on a serious note, I knew that things needed to change. And so I reached out to law enforcement and I said, hey, I've got like 2 years of transcripts, I've got data, I've got screenshots, I've got inside access to this dude. Can I please help? Is there something I can do to work together? Because I'm gonna go after him either way, and probably I would get in the way, but I was determined. And they said yes, and they don't usually share back with people, but we built a good relationship, and they provided me information, I provided them information, and I'm not trying to say that I don't want to take anything away from law enforcement and what they did, but it was an honor to be able to help them with that. But at this point, 3's a crowd, and the hunt was on. We were coming for this dude. And it's funny, you wouldn't expect that other criminals would give you tips on who someone might be, or where they might live, or any real information to de-anonymize them. You'd think there'd be a code, like in the old mafia days. Well, there's not. And I got this tip, and I get a lot of information, because at this point, I'd gotten so much attention from the ransomware diaries, I get lots of information sent to me, and 8 out of 10 times, it's crap. So I was looking into this, and they'd sent me this email, sitedev5@yandex.ru. So I started to look at things that were associated with it, and I found all these businesses and websites that were associated and registered to this email address, but they were all legitimate businesses. This profile, this person looked like a legitimate businessman, and I almost moved on, and the only reason I didn't is right as I was about to move on, I looked at one more thing, and I saw that the person who owns this email, his name was Dimitri, and he was selling a car. And guess what type of car it was, guys? A Mercedes, yes. And that's really circumstantial, but it was just enough for me to say, okay, I need to spend more time on this. So I continued to dig, and I found that this same email address had been used to register an account on the same Russian hacking forum that LockBit is present on, but that at the time that it was used, it was before LockBit existed, and it went away before LockBit began. But it wasn't ransomware, but it was still cybercrime. So now I realized, okay, well, there's something here. It might be him. I wasn't positive, and I couldn't write about it because if it's not the guy, I don't want to go destroy somebody's life and put his picture and his name out there and I go, oh, sorry, man, my bad. So I needed time to keep researching this. And it was a Sunday afternoon, and if you guys haven't figured out yet, I stalked this dude. I spent all my time, I was obsessed, and in doing this, I mean, it literally, you get like almost in a character, it changes who you are. And one of the things that I would do is I would use technical means so that I didn't have to stare at my screen as much, and I was monitoring his domains and his infrastructure to include the one that law enforcement had taken down. And if you remember from earlier that the site was taken down and they put the NCA's banner on it, well, they only kept that up for about a week, and they took that down, and then it was just dormant. Well, that same infrastructure that had been seized by law enforcement suddenly came back online, and it looked just like LockBit's site, but much like my fake extortion, they had made a similar site that had LockBit criminals listed as victims, and they posted a countdown to when they were going to identify who LockBit is. So I got my popcorn at that point. I'm like, okay, it's on. So I reached out to them, to law enforcement. I said, hey, I got this guy, I think it's him, but now that you got this timer on it, like, I mean, I got to do my job. Like, I'm gonna have to write something here. So I spent like 2 days just writing this thing. I didn't eat, I didn't sleep. I just worked in documenting everything I had, laying everything out. But the most interesting part of that is I asked law enforcement, hey, you guys good if I publish this? Because they wouldn't tell me if I had the right guy. I said, you good if I publish this? And they were like, do not publish that before we release our indictment. And then I'm like, oh, you got an indictment? And they're like, oh, I didn't say that. So I'm like, all right, so I'm going to take my chances here that this is right. But of course, I'm not going to screw up the operation just to put something out. So I waited quietly, and I didn't even tell people at my company. The only person I told was right before the indictment, and I'm sorry, right before the countdown timer was going to click 0, a few hours before, I contacted the person who I need to work with in order to get the report published on the website. But besides that, my bosses didn't know, nobody knew. And when it hit 0, the indictment dropped, and they named Dmitry, the same person, Dmitry Korshevev, the same person that I had found. And you have an indictment. They even threw on OFAC sanctions, and they didn't give us a ton of information, but you can see, or maybe you can't see, so I'll tell you, the SiteDev5 email addresses in there was listed. And to this day, I honestly don't know if it was a criminal who sent me this, or if it was somebody in law enforcement that wanted to tip me off. I'll probably never know. But it turned out to be the same guy, the right person, and they posted this. I love the pictures that they presented, but I found better pictures, and I was going to post mine. So 1 hour later, I posted my report, the Ransomware Diaries Volume 5, and in it, I doxed his butt. I didn't swear. I doxed him. And I had pictures of his apartment that he lived in from when it was, or maybe it's a condo, but when it was online and being advertised before he owned it. I had all of his personal email addresses. I published his phone numbers, every phone number he's had. I even noted on a map where he lived. I actually had the PIN code to his building to get in. I didn't publish that, but I did have that. And then I made a technical diagram mapping out all of his infrastructure, put up all his social media. So that probably seems crazy to do, but the reason I did it, this guy was probably going to come after me at some point, and I wanted to make sure he had so many problems that I am the last person that he's time to come screw with. And remember, it's not just law enforcement. He has a lot of criminal enemies. He has a ton of money. These guys want to see bad things happen to him. So between law enforcement and criminals, I figured I'd be pretty high up on the list of people he'd have to get to before he came to find me. So at this point, I really, probably should have just walked away, but I needed him to know that it was over. And he lives in Russia. Just because he's indicted doesn't mean he's going to jail. And I didn't want this to continue, so I thought the next best outcome would be if I could persuade him to walk away and to stop committing the crime. Obviously, prison is better. But if we're not going to get that, let's at least stop the crime. So I thought with all of this, with his photo, his information, all this stuff out there, he would do it. So I gave him my farewell message, and after that, I walked away, and I thought, again, I thought that was it. And it was for me and Dmitry, the leader of LockBit Sup. That was where our story ended. He did message me about this talk. He asked if he could come. So if you're in here, Dmitry, raise your hand. That really did happen. It's kind of funny. But this wasn't over. There was still more work to do. If you recall earlier, I was talking about his friends. I was talking about Bastlord. Well, Bastlord was also indicted and named. And his real name's Ivan. Let's see if I can do this. I'm terrible with the Russian names. You'd think I'd be better when I do this for a living. Ivan Kontrativ. Sorry, Ivan, if I got that wrong. And this is actually a courtesy. I have pictures of him, but he doesn't want his picture out there. Other people have put it out there, but I told you, he's a bad person, but I'm not, because he was a likable human being, there was once good in him, and I hope that someday he's going to change his life and do the right thing. Okay, I've got your information. I don't need to put your picture out, but he's not a great guy. He was responsible for the SpaceX hack and a bunch of other things. Really good at what he does, unfortunately. So back in 2023, if you recall, I told you, I wrote about him. I kind of told his story, how he went from this kid being in the Ukraine to being a hacker, to committing all these crimes, explaining his relationships with these different criminals and how he got there. Well, this was, 2 years later, and he went on the forums after his indictment, and he said that I got played, that he made all that up. Basically, it was a fictitious story so that if people caught on to him, they wouldn't have the right person. Now, I don't know why he had to bring me into it, because if he didn't do that, I wouldn't have had to do what I'm about to tell you I did next. But I don't like my work being discredited, and it needed a response. So you would think, besides saying it on a forum, you wouldn't reach out to me directly, but he did. He created an account to spoof another known researcher, this guy Azim from Cisco. He made an account to look like Azim's screen name, and he sent me a message on Twitter, and he said, hey, it's not Ivan, they got the wrong guy. And he came up with this elaborate story about how back in 2020, Ivan had gone to Ukraine and he had bought this young man's credentials and his passport and his paperwork, and he created this mastermind long-term criminal plot to lead everybody astray and left a document trail so that he could get away and no one would know. And then he got a blogger to actually write this story. Now, based on the blogger's name, I'm pretty sure he's not the highest level of journalist. Again, I can't say it here, but this guy wrote this crazy article, and he had quotes from Ivan saying that he wasn't him, and it's like, these Americans keep calling me and saying I did crazy things. I don't know what they're talking about. And the problem is that me and Azim are really good friends, and Azim helped me with a lot of this stuff in the background. So, of course, I know it's not him. And at this point, I'm like, okay, he's got this fictitious story. He's discrediting my work. But let's think about this logically, guys. If you're a criminal and you really did have this master plot for 5 years, and you actually did get away with it, meaning law enforcement believed that this fictitious fake person is actually you, and it's some other guy, you wouldn't go call the researcher who writes every detail he finds out about you that, hey, that's not actually me. You'd go run and enjoy your life and hide while this other poor soul gets arrested. But that's not what he did. So I needed to correct this. I needed to stand behind my work. So I'm going to tell you how I did that. I'm going to walk through this in a fun way. I'm going to tell you the top 6 things to not do if you're a criminal that wants to pretend that you have a fake identity as someone else. Okay, number 6, don't use the same date of birth as the criminal. So the screenshot's from 2020, but it goes back to 2017. It's a VK account. For those of you who don't know, VK is like Facebook, but for Russia, in Russia. And in it, Ivan had all these pictures. He's very creative. He had a lot of talent. He did graphic design. He worked with some clothing companies, things of that nature. And he'd made a lot of posts, but the date of birth was the same. And he also had some, I can't think what you call them, but when you use characters from your keyboard, when you use them to make drawings, he had this exact same ones that Ivan had, or the ones that Bastlord had on his social media accounts. So those were 2 things that kind of stood out. The number 5 thing that you don't do is you don't log into criminal forums from your real IP address. Here's the thing. Criminals do bad things to other criminals, and you often get hacked. Forums got hacked, data got leaked, and I had found one of his IPs, and he did not use a VPN or a proxy, so that means his real IP was exposed. I geolocated it, and with that, you can get within like 3 to 5 miles of the actual location of where that person logged in from. And in this, it just happened to be in the same town in Ukraine where Bastlord had told me he lived. So I also looked at that password, and I'm like, let me see what other accounts I can map to this password. And I found a lot of similar passwords. Not all of them were associated with him, but many of them were. Which brings us to the next mistake he made, number 4. Don't use your real name. When I met Bastlord, he told me his name was Ivan. When I wrote the Ransomware Diaries Volume 2, believe it or not, he went on with voice and did the podcast with them and said, call me Ivan. He did at least change his voice for it. He used software to do that. But he said, yeah, call me Ivan. And he told Azim the same thing. So when indictment comes out and his real name was Ivan, it's like, dude, come on, man. If you're a criminal, you gotta do better. So we had a number of things already, but It gets worse. All right, number 5, don't let researchers gain access to your passport, guys, okay? Azim helped me with this, but we got it. We got Bastlord's passport, and we got this long before the indictment, and we provided this to law enforcement. But we got this long before the indictment, and I just kind of held on to it, and I wasn't going to put that out there publicly. But after the indictment, him saying it wasn't him, there's one critical thing here that you'll see on the screen, and that is his signature on the passport, as well as the date it was issued. Because remember, according to him, this didn't exist until he obtained it in 2020. The passport's 2019, and it has this signature, which brings us to number 2. Don't give autographs. So again, a couple years before the indictment, when I wrote this, I asked him, hey, do you mind signing this? Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I asked him to do that because of the passport. I wanted to see if it was actually him. And because originally I thought he was somebody else, and I had the wrong guy. So this was kind of the way to validate it, was to get him to sign this. And that brings us to number 1. Don't discredit my work. As you can see on the screen, this is what I published. The world could see it. It was his signature, and it was one and the same. It was a good moment because, as crazy it might sound, there were people that were actually believing him when he was saying it wasn't me. LockBit's up, it's the same thing. He also, Dimitri says it's not him. Unfortunately, I don't have the same level of information because Dimitri's better at hiding he's better at OPSEC and hiding who he is than Bastlord was. But this at least put that to rest. I don't think there's any question on who Bastlord is. He is Ivan, and finally, we come to what happens when you don't follow these rules. You end up in the ransomware diaries. And this was a very long journey, guys. It really was. It took a lot out of me. Unfortunately, I'm not smart, and I'm just wrapping up something just as crazy as this right now. But you get burnt out on it. It takes a lot out of you as a human being to be around bad people all the time. The only thing that keeps your sanity is when you actually do stuff to get them back, like the things you've just heard today. And people think that I'm crazy for the things that I do. I'm not crazy. I'm a Boy Scout with a Batman complex, so get it right. I love the adrenaline rush and all that stuff, but that goes away. And I've had the FBI show up at my house to tell me that there was credible threats of violence against me. I've had a lot of bad things happen that keeps you up at night. Not here today, but at home, I don't go anywhere unarmed, and that's just not who I normally am. But it's the life that I live now, but I feel like it makes a big enough difference that I keep doing it. I'm not gonna do it forever, but I'm also not done yet. So with that, this case is closed. And besides this sort of wrapping up the talk, I also wanted to get to say goodbye to Dimitri, so I made this nice photo of us together so that he'd understand the heartbreak that I felt that we wouldn't get to play with each other on the forums and the internet anymore. But I have new friends, and I have new stories, so don't worry, there'll be more. With that, does anybody have any questions?
You talked about the infrastructure for the leak sites and then the actual ransomware sites. Are those two different sets of infrastructure? And if so, did the FBI take down both?
So it depends on the criminal is the answer. And even when it is the same site, and I'm going to answer specifically your question, but even when it is the same site, there'll be often mirrored servers, because if they have something taken down, even if it's just because of an outage, they want just like a business. They run this like a business. They want the availability to be at 99%. But in this case, the FBI intentionally only took down one side so the affiliates would log in. They dismantled the back end of the panel so it couldn't be used, but they left it so they could log in so they would get that nice message, that nice welcoming message. And that's also why they only had it up for a week. They just wanted the message to be seen, but they didn't want to continue making it available. You look familiar to me. Are you a criminal?
I got a question for you.
Yes.
Forgive me, I'm not a techie at all. Right here.
Oh, sorry, I've got the lights in my face.
Okay, so when they finally found the organization they were going after, how did the money transfer? Are we dealing with crypto? What's going on, and all that kind of fun stuff?
Yeah, so that's information that they put in their ransom note, and they put it on their leak site. But yes, it's always cryptocurrency, and different criminals will use different forms of cryptocurrency. And there are some forms of cryptocurrency that are much harder for law enforcement to track. The thing is that they want it to be as easy as possible for victims to pay. Not everybody's into crypto, so they usually give you multiple options. But yes, that is one of the ways that a lot of criminals get caught, is because of the money. It's one thing to get it, but it's another to be good at laundering it. And yes, there are what's called mixers, to where it sort of disperses the money, the cryptocurrency, from one point to multiple points. But it still takes a lot to get that into cash. Obviously they do, but not everyone is good at it, and that's how many of them get caught.
I saw in one of the quotes you were talking, there was a mention of market rates, and then you just talked about running it like a business. So there's got to be some code of ethics amongst these criminals. Is there a point of diminishing returns if they get a lot of people that don't act towards those anymore?
That's a really good question. It's funny that you ask that, because it was a Saturday, and LockBit and Bastlord had this conversation that I was able to see, and they were discussing that there was not a good rate on their return, and that there were too many hackers that were good at hacking, but they were not good with negotiating, and they were taking too little money. So he put out a poll to all the affiliates, asking them what they thought of this new revenue model he created, where they would use I don't know if it was Zoom info, but they used some public source to see what the revenue of that company was the previous year, and there was a percentage of that. That first ransom demand, which they know is going to be negotiated down, is that hard number of what he was proposing would be the hard number of where they start, and then there was another number of where they were allowed to end. And if it didn't meet those requirements, then they just didn't get anything. They didn't get the key. But they were like, I call them the Walmart of ransomware groups. They ran it like a business. They did. The ones that don't are the ones that you see come and go, but these guys have been around because they have that discipline. They literally, LockBit does not go away. They still exist today. They're far, far diminished, and they're not where they used to be, so I don't see them in the news as much. But the point is that they want to run it like a business, and they treat it like a business, and he does branding, and he's great at marketing himself, and that's what brought all of these criminals in to work for him.
What's your educational and experience background that got you the set of skills that you have?
So I was not good in school. I think my high school cumulative GPA was a 1.9. I'm serious. So I went into the Army, became a military policeman, and I started working with the Criminal Investigative Division, and I was in my early 20s doing crazy undercover stuff in Hawaii. It was a great time, but I think that's kind of what's led me to look at this, and I'm like, oh, it's from behind a screen. This has got to be easier than in person, or so I thought. But to answer your question, I was self-taught. I did eventually, because when I worked in the government, they wouldn't pay me anymore or promote me if I didn't get a degree. So I went to the great University of Strayer. It's an online university, and and I struggle. I have a learning disability, and I really struggle with, this sounds crazy, with numbers and things like that. So self-taught. I did get a degree, but a lot of this is just because I have such a passion for it. It enables me sort of to learn more. And I love technology and figuring out the puzzles of how things work. And now it's just kind of taking another step to also figuring out how people work.
You talked about having multiple sock puppets set up. Can you talk about what the first and the two supporting ones are used for, and how someone would do that if they wanted to do something similar to what you've done?
Yes. So first, there are classes, this isn't a plug, through SANS that do teach you how to do this stuff. But it's sort of the purpose of, so the primary account has to fit into the world that you're trying to access. So not everything is ransomware. There's other types of crimes. They're not always from Russia. There's criminals all over the world. So you have to figure that out. But that first puppet needs to be a mold that fits within that window. But you have to go and create all these other accounts, legitimate social media accounts, email accounts, and you have to spend time creating a history on these forums. And you generally, it's easier to do if you're not having to interact with real criminals. So that's what the supporting networking accounts are for, so you can get in whether they're arguments or heated conversation, or just sometimes these guys will just post to talk about technologies or news events. They often post about me. They talk so much trash about me. It's funny. But you have to make them believable. But to get more detail to your answer, one of the things that I did is called account hijacking, where it was an account that was known at one time, had gone dormant. And again, there's a lot of, I don't get myself in trouble here, there's a lot of leaks, there's a lot of information, so figuring a way to access that account, you can become that person. That's not always going to be available though, so sometimes you just got to do the work and build it, and it can take a long time. That's why I hated having to burn it when I wrote the thing, because all that work for those were now gone, but the cause was worth it.
Incredible story and investigation. Thank you all for coming, and another round of applause for Jon DiMaggio.
Thank you. Thank you.